Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to appreciate not only our permanent representative, but the two gentlemen as well to host us in our premises and on Hungarian soil, as the ambassador put it rightly. And thank you very much for putting together such a distinguished audience for tonight, where we try to emphasize the role of Central Europe under the quickly changing circumstances of the current global changes, and try to understand a little bit more and highlight a little bit more about why we think that the Central European countries could and should be natural and obvious allies for the US presidential administration. The ambassador put it rightly. Our position is a little bit more complicated by name than just a Minister of Foreign Affairs. In Hungarian, the ministry I lead has a name: Ministry of External Economic Relations and Foreign Affairs, and the sequencing counts, to be honest. You know, we are a small country with a small but open economy. And when it comes to global issues, we always have to be careful, because we have to be aware of the fact that small countries can say interesting and exciting things, but it's very complicated for small countries to say important things. And if you think that you are more important than you should think about that, then you become ridiculous very easily. So that's why being careful and modest as a foreign minister of a small country, I think is appropriate. And when we thought about the foreign policy strategy of ours, and when we thought about the structure, which then ended up in an external economic relationships and foreign affairs, the reason for that was that we understood that, if I take it in a diplomatic way, I would say no one expects us to offer the solution for the global issues. If I put it more bluntly, I would say no one really cares what we think about these issues. So that's why we rather put economy and economic diplomacy in the forefront of our economic policy, understanding the fact that our country has over 90% export over GDP ratio, and has around 8,600 euros FDI per capita. So you can see how dependent we are on external relations. But this is just the explanation who you're gonna listen to in the upcoming, hopefully very short period of time. First, I would like to emphasize, and I don't think I should take too much to try to convince you about that when we come together now, and the General Assembly is being convened now, these are absolute challenging times. Challenging times, especially for European Union and for the entire European continent. As you think about European Union, we might agree that this integration used to be a global power, but I think the expression "used to be" is there with a good reason, because currently, because of the global changes, European Union has to fight for this position because it's not quite obvious that we still occupy that. Why? Because we have lost a lot of competitiveness, obviously, in the recent years, and the reason for that is that European Union has been faced with enormously historic challenges. If you just allow me, I would like to list a couple of them. Migration, you all know about that. Migration crisis is the most serious challenge European Union has ever had to face. A threat of terror. I remember a couple years or decades back, not to be shy, so a couple of years back, as we watched television, watched the news, we have seen the scenes in the Middle East, we were quite sure that such kind of phenomena definitely would never happen in Europe. And now a threat of terror has become the part of everyday life. And this is something that we do not want to accept, but currently this is the situation. And there are the challenges of energy security, We speak a lot about the necessity of diversification, but no significant forward progress has been completed. There's a war in Ukraine, and there's Brexit. The British citizens decided to leave the European Union. And we have to admit that if you list these historic challenges, we have to admit that no real answers have been given to these challenges, because within a maximum 2 years, the economic performance of the European Union will be decreased by its 1/7. That's the stake UK represents. The size of single market will be decreased. On the other hand, the cooperation between European Union and Russia is worse and worse day by day, although there has been no forward progress regarding the implementation of the Minsk agreements. As we see, the terrorist attacks pose the most serious threat of terror ever on the European Union, and ended up in the worst security situation ever in the modern history. And we see a European Commission in the meantime, which definitely overplays its role. And instead of looking for real solutions for these real challenges, sometimes, I think with a good reason, we have a feeling that they rather take too much time to insult some member states of the European Union. Currently, there is a big debate within the integration, which way to go forward, how we look at the future of the European Union. And I think that it's rather natural and obvious currently that we have a debate, because we have a big number of historic challenges. We have 28 sovereign member states. So I think we should not consider it as a tragedy, should not consider it as bad news that we have debates. Because when should we have debates, if not now, about the future of the integration? And maybe it's simplifying a little bit, or simplification a little bit, but I can tell you that there are two major camps arguing with each other. One can be described as a federalist camp, representatives of which say that more authorities should be taken to Brussels, less to be left by the member states. So creation, a kind of a United States of Europe, would be the desirable solution. I don't want to hide that we don't agree with that. We belong to the other camp, which can be considered as like sovereignist. This camp says, or the countries in this camp say that we should not bring more authorities to Brussels because EU can only be strong if the member states are strong. So the stronger the member states are, the stronger European Union can be. So these are the two major approaches which are now in clash currently about the future of the European Union. But once again, I would like to underline that it's not a bad news that we have a debate, and I rather consider that an undemocratic approach which would like to take away the right from the countries to discuss and debate about the future. In this debate, there's one strong, and there are multiple, but there's definitely a strong and pragmatic voice, which is echoed by Central Europe, by the Central European countries. So I think I may be biased, but I still have the position that the common sense is represented by the Central European countries in this debate. And we have a huge advantage here that we are not hijacked by hypocrisy and political correctness, as many factors in European politics, unfortunately. And hypocrisy and political correctness are exactly two reasons why European Union has not been able to find the proper solutions for the major challenges so far. And based on this common sense, based on policies, based on common sense, it's not an exaggeration to say that currently Central Europe is the safest, most secure place of Europe, and Central Europe is the growth engine for the European economy, with having a higher growth rate than the European average itself. You know, the country I represent, as the other Central European countries as well, have suffered under a very long communist regime. As a consequence, the welfare state concept has never been completed in this country. And instead of that, I would describe our societies like workfare societies. Societies which are merit-based. And merit you can reach through labor, through work. And that's why the Central European countries put job creation and labor in the heart of their economic policies and put together economic strategies which support those people who want to work more and those companies, those employers who would like to employ more people. And based on this pragmatic approach towards economy, we succeeded to be able to maintain a growth path which is currently above the European average, although we have to be fair enough to say that we are coming, of course, from a much deeper situation than anyone else in the European Union. Just to understand, I'm pretty sure that in Central Europe we will never have such kind of a debate that is now going on in some Western European countries about how to decrease the weekly working hours. And in the meantime, they want to be competitive with China. But then the question arises, how? So you can be sure that in Central Europe, such kind of questions will not arise in the future. Regarding the Visegrad cooperation, which was put forward by the ambassador, I can tell you that the Visegrad cooperation, so Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary, is the tightest and the strongest and most effective alliance within the European Union. It became a brand, it became a factor, because if it was not a factor, then definitely there would be no excitement in the European political elite and in the European media whenever the leaders of this alliance gather. And you know, there's always a question mark in the political elite and in the media, so what they gonna find out again? What they gonna say again? So there's always an excitement which shows that, the Visegrad cooperation is a factor. And you know, what gives strength to this alliance is that 8 or 9 out of 10 major issues, we usually have the agreement and the general understanding. And of course, media is always interested in that 1 or 2, where we might have different approaches. But if we put into consideration honestly that in a marriage, if you agree on 8 or 9 major issues out of 10, that's supposed to be a long one. And in this case, since we are sovereign countries, 4 sovereign countries, the fact that 8 or 9 major issues out of 10 we represent the same position shows the strength of the alliance. But we have to be honest and aware of the fact that the Visegrad cooperation is not pretty much favored, not pretty much liked by everyone. Not even in Europe. And pretty frequently there are usually attempts to break this unity, but I can tell you that this Visegrad cooperation has never been as united as currently. And if our European friends put it rationally into consideration, it's easy to see that a strong Central European alliance is in the interest of a strong European Union and strong NATO as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you allow me, I just would like to elaborate a little bit on why we think that the Visegrad, so the Central European cooperation and the United States, the current administration, are obvious allies for each other. First of all, I'd like to say that in many issues, the positions we represent are overlapping. And when we first heard that your president said, America first, that was a kind of feeling of liberation for ourselves. Because we... That's why you heard me twice, and it's way enough to hear me once, I understand. So when your president said for the first time that America first, that was a kind of feeling of liberation for countries like the Central Europeans, which always put national interest as number 1. But before your president said that America first, usually after making it clear that national interest is number 1, we were immediately under very heavy attack with the worst stigmatization that I would not like to quote here. And we were absolutely not frustrated, unlike others, by this statement of your president. We were a little bit more frustrated about the reactions. And I think here we can pose two very simple questions. So, who would say America first, if not the American president? Or the other way around, what would the American president say, what first, if not America? So for us, it was kind of obvious, and gave us the right and the authorization to not only to think, but to speak and act the same way. National interest comes first. And you know, in the Central European countries, we are very patriotic people. And this is based on a historic fact that we had to fight for our freedom many times. And we had to fight for our freedom very recently as well. So national sovereignty is as high on our agenda as here in the United States. We think the same way about migration and security as well. And we both think, Central Europeans and Americans, I mean the administrations, that it's a matter of statehood that you can protect your own borders. And if you are a state, then you do have to be in a position to make your decision on your own, whom you let enter the territory of your country and whom you do not let enter the territory of your country. And both of us look at illegal migration as a threat, as a security threat, which gives the opportunity for terrorist organizations to take advantage of illegal, massive flows to send terrorists and fighters to other parts of the world. And I can tell you that regardless of all pressure put on us, regardless of all blackmailing, Central European countries stick to their position on illegal migration. We will protect our peoples, we will protect our countries, and we will never accept what was said by one of the mayors of big European cities, which was that you know, terrorism and bombs are parts of everyday life in big cities. Now, this is something that we will never accept. We will fight against this phenomenon in a united and unanimous way. But ladies and gentlemen, on the other hand, I have to tell you that we were very happy with the new American administration putting fight against terror very high on their agenda. We are a committed partner and ally of the United States in this regard as well. And we are proud that with the authorization of the Hungarian parliament, 200 Hungarian troops have been serving as part of the US-led global anti-ISIS coalition. 200 Hungarian troops are serving in Iraq, in Erbil, under partly Italian and German command. And we totally agree with your president that we cannot relax and lay back until ISIS is totally defeated. ISIS is a major security threat to Europe as well, since all the major terrorist attacks, around 30 in the last 2.5 years, which demanded 300 lives, were all committed by ISIS. And ISIS is one of the major root causes for illegal migration, not to speak about the fact that because of ISIS, Christianity and the Christian religion became the most persecuted religion all over the world. And with the horrific attacks by ISIS, now every 4 out of 5 persons who are killed because of their religion are Christians. And we Christians have to speak about that, because if we Christians don't speak about that, no one will speak about that. And that's why protection of Christian communities all around the world is a very important responsibility of ours. And I would like to speak about, just very shortly, about the region which is neighboring to Central Europe, but is very high on the US foreign agenda as well, because of its significance regarding geography and geopolitics, and this is the Western Balkans. You know, we are living in the neighborhood of the Western Balkans, so we pretty well know the difference between two positions. One, if there's peace and tranquility and stability in the Western Balkans, and number two, where there's a lack of all of these. And we have to be aware of the fact that there are historic tensions currently on the Western Balkans, and the best way to overcome them is through Euro-Atlantic integration. So we are absolutely interested in supporting these countries on their way, on their path towards Euro-Atlantic integration. And here we have a coincidence of interest with the United States again. Although we have to be honest that there's a kind of an enlargement fatigue in the European Union, so we cannot have very good hopes about the future of the EU enlargement, but we do hope that regarding NATO, the enlargement process will be accelerated. And when it comes to NATO, you know, we really, I would say ridiculous if it was not too serious. But since it's serious, I would say tragic. We really found tragic the reactions on Donald Trump's positions regarding NATO as he came to his first meeting in Brussels. And I was really shocked by international media misinterpreting his position, saying that Donald Trump said NATO is obsolete, because I think we have to be fair enough towards each other. And I was, I think, among that 10 European people who read the whole interview of Donald Trump at that time, who said that NATO is obsolete in a sense that it could have and should have been much more successful regarding the fight against terror, which is totally different what was put forward as if he had said that. So, so regarding NATO, we absolutely agree with the President that NATO should be reformed. NATO should be much more successful regarding the fight against terror. We are very happy that NATO finally decided to join the anti-ISIS global coalition as an alliance. I think that was a very, very important move. And we really think that and agree that European countries must do more for their own security. And I can say it, please believe, in a credible way, because we are among those countries which are very far away of the 2% threshold. But we agree with the President. We have to take our obligations and our commitments seriously, and we have a plan how to get there. And really do think that the European countries must do more for the European security. And if you allow me, I would like to touch upon another aspect of security, which is energy security. Because, you know, in Europe, most countries are either dependent, either just being very important partners of Russia when it comes to gas supply. You know, Hungary imports 85% of gas from Russia. 90% of the households are running on gas. And, you know, we agree with all attempts and plans in favor of diversification, routes, sources, forms of energy. And we were extremely happy with your President speaking in Warsaw about American gas as a American liquefied gas as a possibility to help to diversify the energy sources for Central Europe. But we have one bad news there. It's impossible to deliquefy gas back at home in the kitchen. And since there's no infrastructure in Central Europe to deliquefy gas, currently LNG from the United States and from anywhere else is just a very, very, very long-term plan when it comes to diversification of gas in Central Europe. So if the Americans, if the American energy sector thinks it seriously that American LNG could play a role in Europe in the future, then investments would be welcome. And last but not least, I would like to say that those quick challenges which are happening around us basically divide countries into two, let's say, categories, winners and losers, because every changes have winners and losers. And based on the united voice and united policy based on common sense carried out by the Visegrad countries, we can say that so far the Central European countries are among those countries which can be considered as winners of these big changes. But this is not the final result yet. So we have to be aware of the fact that whoever lays back, whoever feels relaxed, can lose position very, very quickly and suddenly. So the Visegrad countries will continue to work hard on the policies based on common sense. We will work hard together with the current administration on economic defense and hopefully political issues as well. And you can be sure that a strong Visegrad cooperation will always serve as a strengthening force and factor for both European Union and NATO. And as far as we understand, this is both in the interest of the current administration of the United States. So this is what I can summarize about what we see how we see Central Europe and how we see our cooperation with the United States. I really do appreciate two wonderful organizations to host us. Even it's more valuable because you hosted me last time as well, so that shows that I didn't ruin totally the reputation of your organization as you return this year as well. And I really do hope that you could have at least one or two thoughts out of this useful what was put forward here. So once again, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for your attendance.
I'm an American Muslim. While I admire your presentations and the progress Hungary has made, economic progress and progress in the other areas, I've been uncomfortable with your stand, position, Hungarian position and in general and your position in particular about this migration and immigration issue. I understand, I'm not suggesting that Hungary should be open for these refugees or the people who came to Hungary. But according to UNHCR, United High Commission for the Refugees, Hungary was singled out as one of the countries which was tough to the extent that it would not let Hungary become a transient point for these people who are coming from different parts of the Middle East. So much so, I mean, our president talks about this wall with Mexico. You have gone ahead and developed an enclave where you have put these refugees or would not let them into the mainstream. And to say that Christians are in threat more than anybody else is not fair, Mr. Prime Minister. Jews, Muslims, as a matter of fact, Muslims are bigger victims of this terrorism than anybody else. We all are. ISIS is totally indiscriminate in doing that. I just wonder, is there any xenophobia here? Thank you.
Can we collect? Is it okay as a working methodology to collect the questions? Yeah. Okay, please, go ahead.
His Excellency, my name is Dr. Sabir Michael. I'm a Catholic living in Pakistan. First of all, I am feeling privileged to be here. And secondly, I feel proud listening to your comments about the atrocities against the Christian community. I'm not disagreeing that the Muslim community is not facing the problems, but sometimes when we use the term Islamophobia, this is exaggerated sometimes. May I humbly request my friends, just consider it as the Muslims are in problems and there are so many people to raise voice against this, but Hungary is the first country which has at least taken initiative to highlight the Christian community issues. I would like to commend you, and I would just like to say I have two small gifts for you and a permanent ambassador which I would like to give you later.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Atul Singh, founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of Fair Observer. So when you were speaking, I almost heard, or I certainly heard echoes of Maggie Thatcher's speech in Bruges. And her Bruges speech was all about championing national sovereignty, talking about the democratic deficit in Brussels, and so on and so forth. So my question is that with Brexit, do you think your camp has weakened?
Hello, my name is Oktay. I'm a neurosurgeon from Turkey, TV channel I9. Well, as you know, Turkey accepted 3.5 million refugees from Syria, and they are brothers and sisters. And our doors are open to everybody because these people are in need. We cannot return them back to the murderers. I'm not criticizing your policy, your national policy, but EU countries, I think, should support Turkey, because Turkey is not a rich country. And it can double, it can triple, doesn't matter. These people are in need, they cannot be returned back to the northern. That's one thing. The second thing is radicalism and terrorism. You talked about military interventions, but military interventions have been tried many decades. Violence only generates more violence. There are more than 44 terrorist organizations all over the world. There is fundamental ideology of terrorism. Bigotry, superstitions are accepted widely in the Islamic world. Instead of trying these military interventions, modern warfare, smart bombs, and putting bullets into the heads of the people, why not putting ideas into the head of the people? To change their false ideas with the true ideas. So educational campaigns. Don't you think this will be more effective? Thank you.
Dr. von Hanver, EGBN TV Paris. President Macron has suggested the imminent need for the development of an independent European security force. And there's strong support also in some elements of the German leadership on both sides of the political aisle for the concept of developing a military capability for Europe that is separate and distinct from NATO. What is the position of your government and the Visegrad Group on this direction and the opinion of President Macron of France? Thank you.
Thanks. There are two more questions. Let's take them, and then we
Thank you.
try to answer.
Carlos Stegler with Research. First, your very brilliant ambassador made the point that your countries are in the middle, and you consider yourselves in the middle. So what is the possibility of your serving as a bridge between East and West, rather than aligning yourself with the U.S.? Why not try and serve as mediation or negotiator between the two polar extremes? And one more follow-up. The UN is looking into the roots of terrorism, and they've identified quite a bit in poverty, destitution, lack of opportunities. So how would you deal with that?
Thank you. Okay. And we have the two last questions, gentleman there, and the lady here in the second row, please. Okay, please go ahead, and then.
If I can answer, yeah, my name is Esteban. I'm director of the media department of the ICD, one of the organizations hosting. Well, we cannot agree with everything, but just an advice, for example, for what I'm going to say next. You know, I am a relative of the former president of International Big Committees, Juan Antonio Samaran. So it's just to say that, for example, I also have in my family kind of conservative brain as well. Don't you think that it's so dangerous to use the term illegal immigration? Because for me, migration is not illegal. I don't know. I had the opinion. I don't know. I would like to know if you agree with me that the planet doesn't belong to humans; it belongs to humanity.
Thanks. And let's take the last one, please.
Thank you. Nancy Campbell, President of the Board of Directors for the Foreign Press Foundation, and I'm a long-term resident of the United Nations. I would like to know, since you do agree with President Trump and has obviously shared some opinions with him very closely, do you look upon the United Nations as a failed institution? And if so, what do you think should be done to make it a little bit more vital? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all the questions you have raised. I think the wide variety of questions has shown that foreign affairs is no more boring. And like a couple of decades ago, as foreign affairs was rather about making long-term strategies while smoking cigars and drinking fine whiskey and making philosophies for hours and hours. Now this is not that kind of age, definitely, and foreign affairs can make excitement, and that's good news, I think, for all of us who deal with foreign affairs. First, I would like to address the question of the gentleman about the Christians. You know, I can say that I wholeheartedly reject your accusation, which was put in the form of a question at the very end of your contribution, but I don't do it since it's a friendly environment. But what I would like to tell you is that, you know, being a good Christian means that you cannot be anti-anything. If you are Christian, you cannot be anti-anything. And in the meantime, I can tell you that I myself, as a Christian, I think I really do have the right to speak about persecuted Christian communities all over the world. No one can take this right away from me. As my friend, Foreign Minister of Turkey, Mevlut, he usually speaks about Islamophobia, and he usually speaks about the phenomenon of persecuted Muslim communities, which he is right. Because there are persecuted Muslim communities, there are parts of the world where there is Islamophobia. Unfortunately, we wish there was no such kind of a phenomenon. But may I ask why I should not be allowed to speak about the phenomenon that in many places of the world, Christian communities are under very heavy persecution? I don't think that it's fair to to question this right of each other, because that leads to very bad consequences, like what you have put at the very end of your contribution. And I don't think that any of us being here in this room would suffer from any kind of phobia. And you can be sure that me or us, as good Christians, we are absolutely against any kind of phobias, especially against Islamophobia, because once again, I would like to tell you that being Christian means that you cannot be anti-anything. On the other hand, about migration, wall and fence and all these measures. You know, and that comes to illegal migration as well, so maybe I put it in a package. And in the meantime, I would like to express to you how much we respected the president of the International Olympic Committee. So when it comes to the phenomenon of illegal migration, I cannot consider a form of migration legal in which people in a massive crowd violate a border between two peaceful countries. I cannot consider a migratory flow legal as people entering territory of a country by violating its border, not cooperating with the local authorities. I cannot consider migration legal when people in big crowd occupy public areas, block highways, and occupy railway stations just because they would like to get to another country. This is not the way people should behave, just simply. There's a legal way how you can enter the territory of another country, right? There are rules and regulations, as you do it, as I do it. And I cannot put here forward any reason, just to give you a practical example, what I think illegal migration. I cannot put here any reason here why anyone should be allowed to violate a border between Croatia and Hungary, for example. Two peaceful countries, two members of the European Union. What's the reason for that? Because if we say that from today onward it is allowed to anyone to cross a border between two EU member states just as he or she wants, then from tomorrow onwards, the question is then why cannot we do it in any other part of the world? Why do I have to be photographed if I want to come to the United States? So, you know, there are rules and regulations how you can cross borders. And definitely, if you do it against the regulations, it's just simply illegal. Because once again, I would like to reiterate, and here I come to Turkey, because we really respect the endeavors of Turkey. We were absolutely in favor of the EU-Turkey deal regarding migration. I feel very badly, when your country is being criticized constantly by European leaders. Because I'm very frustrated. I feel frustrated when some European leaders seem to be more concerned about the rights of those who committed a coup in your country than because of the coup itself. And when there were negotiations with Turkey, we were absolutely in favor in putting together a substantive financial package with which we can support Turkey. And when I listen to Mevlut, when he complains to me that the 3 billion euros were not paid yet to Turkey, I think it's not the proper way. And if we agreed in something, then we have to deliver. And you know, this is exactly our policy, that we have to bring help where it is needed. And we understand there are war-torn areas from people, from where people have to leave, from people where people are forced to leave. And if you cross a border of a war-torn area and the next country, that is definitely not illegal, to come back to the other gentleman's question. And we think that what EU must do, should do, is to support substantially, with a robust amount of money, those countries which have been taken care of refugees around the war-torn areas. Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, the Kurdish region of Iraq. You know, we made our initiatives to increase financial resources for these countries. Because we think, once again, we have to bring help where it is needed. That's why Hungary, by the way, supports financially Christian communities living all around the war-torn areas in order to remain strong. Because when we talk to their leaders, you know what they say? They beg, please, do not encourage our people to leave and go to Europe, because then our communities will be over. So our policy is we have to bring help where it is needed, and we have to help those countries which have been taken care of refugees. When it is about defense, you know, Hungary belongs to the Schengen area in the European Union. And the Schengen Code says that if you are a country located at the external border of the Schengen area, then it is your core obligation to make it sure that your border is only crossed through the official border crossing points with the necessary and proper travel documentation during opening hours. And when this whole crisis broke out in 2015, then we posed the question in Brussels whether this extraordinary situation can serve as an excuse, you know, not to comply with these European regulations. Answer was no, no, no. You have to comply with all your obligations. You know, and complying with the Schengen obligations, with more than 500 kilometers of land border, which is either external border of EU or external border of the Schengen area, you cannot do anything else than build a physical infrastructure. And you know why European Union is hypocritic on that? Because that commissioner of the European Commission, who is responsible for migration, he is a Greek person, by the way. He was the Minister of Defense of Greece when Greece built a fence on the Greek-Turkish border because the illegal migration from Turkey to Greece was too significant, and this minister made a statement that this fence is a very good solution to tackle the illegal migration from Turkey to Greece. He was the Minister of Defense. He praised it. And now he stands in Brussels at the press conference and bashes those countries who do the same. You know? And I have never heard any complaints about Spain building fences around their cities in North Africa. I never heard any complaint about Bulgaria building a fence on their border to Turkey. So double standards should not apply, regardless whether we agree about the core issue or not. And another additional element to that. When there's a huge illegal influx, mass influx of migration, then when there are tens of thousands on a daily basis crossing borders, unregulated, uncontrolled, unchecked, even when we travel, I'm X-rayed on an airport, whether I take something with me or not. And we had days when tens of thousands of people entered the territory of Hungary massively without any kind of control and any kind of regulation. Now the question is whether it poses a security threat or not. Whether it gives the opportunity for terrorist organizations to take advantage of this wave and send their terrorists or not. And you know why we have, or what proves that we have hypocrisy in Europe, that when I speak like this, and I usually do because I can afford to say what I think, you know, it is usually characterized in Europe that the foreign minister of Hungary said that the migrants are terrorists. Did I say? No, definitely I didn't. What I said that this illegal, huge, massive influx gives opportunity for terrorist organizations to ruin security in other parts of the world. Now about fight against terror and not only to use weapons, right, or to make educate. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree that that we have to start this whole. Okay, yeah. So a very important element of our anti-terrorist or anti-terror strategy should be education programs for the youngsters, to show them and to prove them that that terrorism is not the way, and especially not the only way to live their lives. So we offer many scholarships for countries in the Middle East, countries in Asia, countries in Africa, countries in South America. Many scholarships, thousands, and there are thousands of students from these countries come to study in Hungary. Thousands of them are Muslims because they enjoy their stay in Hungary. No one hurts them. Everyone respects them. So I totally agree. And I really do hope that other countries will run such robust scholarship programs like we do. We are a small country, but we do our share, even above that. And we really do hope that the bigger and richer countries will do the same that we have been doing. When it comes to the common European army, you know, it's a matter of a big debate currently when it comes to the reform of NATO. And you know, Hungary, the Hungarian government is absolutely supportive to the idea of a common European army because we think that Europe must do more for its own security. Now, what we have to be careful with is that we shouldn't duplicate structures. We shouldn't cause ineffective situations. But a common European army, we think, would be absolutely in the interest of Europe. Now, when it comes to mediation between East and West, you know, once again, I'm representing a small Central European country, but we have a very clear and simple understanding of history. Whenever there was conflict between East and West, Central Europe always lost, regardless what time it was, regardless what were the names of the alliances which were, you know, colliding each other, regardless what was the name of the countries. Whenever there was a conflict between East and West, Central Europe lost. And I don't think it would be an exaggeration from our perspective or an unexpected expectation that we don't want to be losers anymore. So for us, a better and more pragmatic cooperation between East and West than currently is a wish. But since we are small, I cannot use the verb urge or something because I don't want to be ridiculous. But I just want to say we wish there was a better cooperation between East and West because that could add a security guarantee to Central Europe. Last but not least, the reform of the United Nations. I agree with those who say that UN should be reformed. I agree with those ones who say that that UN should have and could have been more effective and quicker on some issues. That's why, like threat of terror, fight against terror, for example. That's why we welcomed the creation of a position of a Deputy Secretary General responsible for fight against terror. Today, I have met Mr. Voronkov. I think he was the right choice by the Secretary General. We think that the UN should make sure that the high-ranking officials of the United Nations don't use their position to bash countries on a one-sided basis. We suffered a lot of that as well. So we think that well-paid high-ranking officials of the United Nations should be balanced, should be fair, and should look at both sides of the coin and don't make reports simply based on biased information. We think that that Human Rights Council should be should be handled in a more careful way than currently, not to become the platform of bashing some picked countries. You know, and I understand here the American reform efforts are absolutely in line with ours. I took part on the event organized by Nikki Haley the day before yesterday, and made our position very clear there. But we contribute to the financially to the operation of the political department, to the preventive diplomacy. So we are happy with those functions. The question is whether it could work better. Every organization could work better. So I definitely would not call UN as a failure, because I think UN is the most important international organization, and this most important international organization has to undergo reforms time to time as time flies and circumstances change, and definitely the big organizations have to change as well. So, Brexit. Sorry, yeah, Brexit, yeah, the bonus track. Regarding Brexit, I think that, or let's say, if it's not too much, I'm certain that Brexit is a huge political and economic loss for the European Union. UK represented 1/7 of the economic performance of the European Union, number 2 economy of Europe, number 5 economy of the world. So obviously, if such kind of a country leaves an integration that shows that integration needs to, think about how to do better in the future. Okay, definitely UK represented a sovereignist kind of position, like they were arguing in favor of a stronger role for the national parliaments, less bureaucracy, more competitiveness, digital economy, and so on and so forth. That's something that we will miss from the debates, from the future debates about the future of the European Union. I think the European Commission should have and could have been a little bit more sensitive to the issues of the UK, and if they had been a little bit more sensitive, it could have been possible to keep them in. We regretted the decision pretty much, but we respected it because we don't want to commit the mistake that many countries commit, that comment on the decisions of peoples of other countries. So we regret it, but respect it, but we definitely look at Brexit as a huge loss to the European Union and to our camp as well, to be very blunt. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, one last question we take, because we are very democratic, and but afterwards I really do have to leave, because tomorrow I'll have to deliver a speech on the General Assembly, and I don't want to bring shame on my country not to be prepared. So let's take the last question, please, the gentleman, and then I apologize. Okay, let's try with a working one. Right.
Yes, I just wanted to express my appreciation for your presentation and being here with us. I'm a Hungarian American.
So it's very good that I insisted on giving you the microphone.
If they ask me who I am, I say 50% Hungarian, 100% American. Now, you did very well. My only sadness here that it didn't come out from the crowd how much you wanted a common ground between the audience and yourself. I know that Donald Trump is not the most popular person in this room, at least. But may I quote Michelle Obama, maybe? That would work. She said, when they go low, we should go high. And that's what you did. You may represent a very small country, but you're a very big man. And thank you very much, because we all have a lot to do with you.
Okay, now.
I wanted to make you feel comfortable before you meet this group of people.
I really do appreciate, and okay, now everyone will say that I insisted on giving you the microphone because I knew that you would say that, but no, I really do appreciate for everyone to come and listen to me today. I really do hope that we could leave at least one or two valuable thoughts here. And regarding Donald Trump, whether being popular or not, since I'm 100% Hungarian, it doesn't really matter what I think about Donald Trump himself, because I never voted, and most likely I will never vote in the United States for any presidential candidate. And since it would be ridiculous to form such kind of an opinion, I just can say that we respect the decision of the US citizens, and we're happy that some getting rid of political correctness and hypocrisy is shown. We see the president's struggle. We see the attacks on him. What we can wish him is good luck, not because of liking or disliking him, but because he's the president of the United States of America, and I think it's the interest of the world to have a successful United States, and that's what we cross fingers and hope for. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, I would like to thank you to come here to talk. And what I would like to stress, that the Hungarian mission is for dialogue in the Security Council, in the General Assembly, in all our meetings. And I think that is why it was so important that we listened, we talked to the minister, and then we will continue our conversation and dialogue, because this is what we believe in. Thank you very much.